Hello, lovely viewers. You are most welcome to our channel Poetry Online. In this video, we shall be presenting to you the detailed analysis of the play Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. Kindly subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to get updates on all our new videos. Once again, let us assure you of a very interesting discussion. Get ready for this lesson. At the start of the play, the city of Thebes is suffering terribly. Citizens are dying from plague. Crops fail. Women are dying in childbirth, and their babies are stillborn. A group of priests come to the royal palace to ask for help from Oedipus, their king, who once saved them from the tyranny of the terrible Sphinx. Oedipus has already sent his brother-in-law, Creon, to the oracle of the god Apollo to find out what can be done. Before Oedipus arrived in Thebes, the previous king, Laius, was murdered under mysterious circumstances, and the murderer was never found. When Oedipus arrived in Thebes and saved the city, he was made a king and married the widowed queen, Jocasta, sister of Creon. Now, Creon returns with the oracle's news. For the plague to be lifted from the city, the murderer of Laius must be discovered and punished. The oracle claims that the murderer is still living in Thebes. Oedipus curses the unknown murderer and swears he will find and punish him. He orders the men of Thebes, under punishment of exile, to give any information they know about the death of Laius. Oedipus sends for Tiresias, the blind prophet, to help with the investigation. Tiresias comes, but refuses to tell Oedipus what he has seen in his prophetic visions. Oedipus accuses Tiresias of playing part in Laius' death. Tiresias grows angry and says that Oedipus is the cause of the plague. He is the murderer of Laius. As the argument escalates, Oedipus accuses Tiresias of plotting with Creon to overthrow him, while Tiresias hints at other terrible things that Oedipus has done. Convinced that Creon is plotting to overthrow him, Oedipus declares his intention to banish or execute his brother-in-law. Jocasta and the chorus believe Creon is innocent and beg Oedipus to let Creon go. He relents, reluctantly, still convinced of Creon's guilt. Jocasta tells Oedipus not to put any stock in what prophets and seers say. As an example, she tells him the prophecy she once received, that is, Laius, her first husband, will be killed by their own son. And yet, Laius was killed by a stranger, and her own infant son was left to die in the mountains. But her descriptions of where Laius was killed, a triple crossroad, worries Oedipus. It is the same place where Oedipus once fought with several men and killed them. One of them fit the description of Laius. He asks that a surviving eyewitness to Laius' murder be brought to him. He tells Jocasta that oracles have played a big part in his life as well. He received a prophecy that he will kill his father and sleep with his mother, which is why he left Corinth, the city he was raised in, and never returned. An old messenger arrives from Corinth for the news that Oedipus' father, King Polybus, has died of old age. This encourages Oedipus. It seems the prophecy might not come true, but he remains worried because his mother is still alive. The messenger tells him not to worry. The king and queen of Corinth were not his real parents. The messenger himself brought Oedipus as a baby to the royal family as a gift after a shepherd found a boy in the mountains and gave him to the messenger. The shepherd was the same man Oedipus has already sent for, the eyewitness to Laius' murder. Jocasta begs Oedipus to abandon his search for his origin, but Oedipus insists he wants to know the story of his birth. Jocasta cries in agony and leaves the stage. The shepherd arrives but does not want to tell what he knows. Only under threat of death does he reveal that he disobeyed the order to kill the infant son of Laius and Jocasta, and instead gave the baby to the messenger. That baby was Oedipus, who in fact killed his father Laius and married his mother, Jocasta. Oedipus realizes that he has fulfilled the awful prophecy. Queen Jocasta kills herself, and Oedipus, in a fit of grief, gouges out his own eyes. Blind and grief-stricken, Oedipus bemoans his fate. Creon, after consulting an oracle, grants Oedipus' request and banishes him from Thebes. Let's now take the detailed analysis of the play. starting with a prologue. Oedipus Rex begins outside King Oedipus's palace, where the spodent beggars and the priests have gathered and brought branches and wreaths of olive leaves. Oedipus enters and asks the people of Thebes why they pray and lament, since apparently they have come together to petition him with an unknown request. The priest speaks on their behalf, and Oedipus assures them that he will help them. The priest reports that Thebes has been beset with horrible calamities such as famine, fires, and plagues have all caused widespread suffering and death among their families and animals, and their crops have been destroyed as well. He beseeches Oedipus, whom he praises for having solved the riddle of the Sphinx, an action which justified his succession to King Laius as Jocasta's husband and as king, to cure the city of its woes. Oedipus expresses profound sympathy and announces that he has sent Creon, the Queen Mother's brother, to Delphi to receive the oracle of Apollo in order to gain some much needed guidance. Creon arrives, and Oedipus demands, against Creon's wishes, that he reports the news in front of the gathered public. Creon reports that the gods caused the plague as a reaction against the murder of their previous king, Laius, and that they want the Thebans to drive out pollution sheltered in their land. In other words, to find the murderer and neither kill or exile him. Laius had been killed on a crossroad by highwaymen. Oedipus vows to root out this evil. In the next scene, the chorus of Theban elders call upon the gods of Apollo, Athena, and Artemis to save them from the disaster. Act 1. Declaring his commitment to finding and punishing Laius's murderer, Oedipus says that he has sent for Tiresias, the blind prophet. At much pleading and mutual antagonism, Oedipus makes Tiresias say what he knows, that it was Oedipus who killed Laius. Outraged at the accusation, Oedipus calls him a fortune teller and a deceitful beggar priest. Both are displaying what in Greek is called augur, or anger, towards each other. Oedipus suspects that the seer is working on Creon's behalf, that is, Creon, as Laius's brother, was and still is the potential successor to the throne. Tiresias thinks that the king is mad for not believing what he is telling him, and for being blind to his own fate, not to mention how ignorant the king is to his true parentage. Oedipus then realizes that he does not know who his real mother is. Tiresias is led out while saying that Oedipus will be discovered to be a brother as well as a father to his children, a son as well as a husband to the same woman, and the killer of his father. He exits, and the chorus enters, warning of the implications of the decisive oracular charges against Oedipus. Act 2. Creon expresses great desire to prove his innocence to Oedipus, who continues to assert that Creon has been plotting to usurp the throne. Creon denies the accusation, saying he is quite content and will not want the cares and responsibilities that come with being king. Oedipus calls for his death. Jocasta, having heard their quarrel, enters and tries to pacify them, and the chorus calls for proof of Creon's guilt before Oedipus punishes him. Jocasta reminds Oedipus of Apollo's oracle and also of the way Laius died. She recounts the story as it was told to her by a servant who was there at the crossroad where the charioteer and an old man attacked a man who in turn killed them. Hearing the tale, Oedipus realizes that he was the murderer and asks to consult the witness, that is, the shepherd was sent for. The chorus expresses its trust in the gods and prays for heaven for restoration of faith in the oracle. Act 3. Jocasta prays to Apollo to restore Oedipus's sanity, since he has been acting strange since hearing the manner in which Laius died. A messenger tells her that King Polybus, the man Oedipus believes to be his father, has died, and that the people of Isthmus want Oedipus to rule over them. Oedipus hopes this news means that the oracle is false, that is, he hasn't killed his father since Polybus has died of old age, but he still fears that he is destined to marry his mother. The messenger tells him that Polybus was not his father, and that he, the shepherd, had been handed the boy Oedipus by another shepherd, one of Laius's men. Jocasta tries to intervene and stop the revelation, but Oedipus welcomes the news. Act 4. The shepherd enters and tells Oedipus, after a great deal of resistance, that he is Laius's son, and that he had had him taken away from his own country by the messenger so as to avoid his fate. The chorus bewails the change in Oedipus from revered and fortunate ruler to one who has plunged into the depths of wretchedness. Act 5. A second messenger reports that Jocasta had just committed suicide, having realized that she was married to her own son and thus had given birth to his children. He also reports that the king, suffering intensely upon hearing the news of his identity, blinded himself for the king's wishes. Oedipus has also requested that he be shown to the people of Thebes and then exiled. He comes out, bewildered and crying, asking for shelter from his painful memory, which cannot be removed as easily as his eyes could be. In the darkness of his blindness, he wishes he were dead and feels the prophetic weight of the oracle. His blindness will allow him to avoid the sight of those people whom he was destined to wrong and towards whom he feels immense sorrow and guilt. He asks Creon to lead him out of the country, to give Jocasta a proper burial, and to take care of his younger daughter, Antigone, who comes to play a central role in the play named after her, and Ismene. In an extremely moving final moment with his children, who he reminds himself are also his siblings, Oedipus hears them and asks to hold their hands for the last time. He tells them they will face difficult lives and will be punished by men for sins they did not commit. For this reason, he employs Thebes to pity them. He asks Creon again to exile him, and in his last speech, he expresses great regret at having to depart from his beloved children. The chorus ends the play by using Oedipus's story to illustrate a famous moral that one should not judge a man's life until it is over. Let's now discuss the major characters in the play, starting with Creon. Creon is the brother of Laius. Before the play begins, Oedipus sends him on a mission to receive the oracle of Apollo at Delphi, and he returns with his news during the prologue. With great hesitation, he reports that the god commands us to expel from the land of Thebes and all the defilements we are sheltering. He says that in order to rid the city of its woes, Oedipus must find the murderer of King Laius, his predecessor. Oedipus feels threatened by Creon and believes that he covets the throne. By some accounts, Creon was to have been the next ruler following his brother's death, and he is thus filled with resentment. When Tiresias tells the unbelieving Oedipus what he will come to know, his identity and responsibility of his father's murder, Oedipus immediately assumes that Tiresias is working for Creon, trying to get him the throne. Creon takes this accusation seriously and wishes to clear his name. The fact that I am being called disloyal to the state, to my fellow citizens, to my friends. Creon defends himself to Oedipus in the next scene, saying that he has no desire to become king, and that Oedipus harms himself and the state in leveling such accusations. Oedipus grows more incensed and calls for Creon's death. Only the pleading of Jocasta and a member of the chorus prevents him from acting. At the end of the play, after Oedipus has blinded himself, Creon becomes king and acts with compassion towards the repentant Oedipus, leading him into the palace, and then, as Oedipus requests, and Apollo has ordained, into exile. Jocasta. Jocasta is Oedipus's wife and mother. She is also the mother of his children. Her first entrance on stage occurs when Oedipus and Creon are in the midst of arguing. Jocasta storms in and demands that they resolve their petty personal dispute because the country's trouble are far more urgent. Poor foolish men, what wicked den is this? With thieves take to death, isn't it shameful that he should rake some private quarrel up? She pleads with Oedipus to believe Creon's good intention towards him, and their hostilities momentarily abate. She assures Oedipus that the oracle proclaiming Laius' murder by his own son was false, since Laius was killed by highwaymen, and his son has been left to die on a lonely mountainside. Rather than pacifying Oedipus, her words hunt her words hunt him. He recalls a shadowy memory and asks her to give detail about Laius' death. The surviving witness to the crime tells Jocasta had come to her when Oedipus was made king and asked her if he could be sent far away. She granted him his wish and now is asked by Oedipus to recall this witness, a shepherd, to the palace to testify about the murder. Jocasta tells Oedipus not to trust in the truth of oracles. When the messenger arrives to tell Polybus' death, Jocasta is hopeful that she can allay Oedipus' fear about fulfilling the prophecy. Later in the same scene, she tries to stop him from questioning the messenger regarding his true father. May you never learn who you are. In a final speech, she calls Oedipus miserable and says she will have no other name for him. Towards the end of the play, a second messenger reports that she has hanged herself, giving a moving account of her wailing and physical expression of grief during her last moments. Oedipus. Oedipus, the eponymous character, the title character, and the protagonist of the play. His name means swell foot or swollen foot, one of the most famous dramatic characters in the history of Western literature. He was singled out by Aristotle in his Poetics as the right kind of protagonist because he inspires the right combination of pity and fear. This was the sort of man who is not preeminently virtuous and just, and yet it is through no badness or villainy of his own that he falls into the misfortune, but rather through some flaw in him. He being one of those who are in a high station and good fortune, like Oedipus and Titus and the famous men of families such as this. Oedipus's fatal flaw, the technical Greek term for which is hamartia, can be thought of as a character's flaw or mistake, or more like Achilles' heel rather than a flaw for which he cannot be held directly responsible. A hereditary curse has been placed on his family, and he unknowingly has fulfilled the terms of the prophecy that Laius' son will kill him and marry his wife. The play's action is concerned with a gradual and delayed revelation of the fulfillment of this oracle. It specifically focuses on Oedipus' quest for knowledge on the one hand, and, on the other characters' resistance to discovering the truth. Jocasta tries to protect her husband and brother from the facts, and the shepherd cannot be forced to speak until his life is at stake. Oedipus impatiently confronts Creon and Tiresias with their hesitation to answer his summons to the palace to share the knowledge with him and the public. Connected with this frustration is a feature of Oedipus' personality for which he is somewhat more responsible. Oedipus is also said to suffer from a character flaw known as hubris or pride, and his cruel treatment to Creon and Tiresias in the aforementioned situations confirm this trait. He insists on hearing the truth again and again in the face of reluctant tellers who are scared of their lives, for his life, and for the future of thieves. Tiresias. Tiresias is a blind prophet and a servant of Apollo. Twice was asked by Oedipus to come to the palace and discuss the crisis in Thebes. In the first act of the play, he finally appears, revealing the reasons for the city's devastation, knowledge that he is reluctant to reveal to Oedipus for fear of making him miserable. Oedipus, feeling himself to be betrayed by the prophet's resistance, verbally assaults Tiresias, used sightless, witless, senseless old man, and accuses him of working on behalf of the usurper, Creon. Reluctantly, Tiresias tells Oedipus that he shall not mock him so quickly. In a famous moment of foreshadowing, he tells the king that it is he who is blind. But I say that you, with both your eyes, are blind. You cannot see the wretchedness of your life, nor in whose house you live, no, nor with whom. Significantly, Tiresias is also the first character in the play to question Oedipus' assumption that he knows his parentage, and to tell him that he has committed atrocities that he does not yet know are his own. He tells Oedipus that he will become blind and poor, that Oedipus is himself Laius' murderer, and that he will learn that he has fathered children with his mother. While Tiresias' presence on the stage is brief, as a prophet representing the god Apollo, he remains one of the most powerful characters in the play. The Theban Elders. The Theban elders of the chorus are considered to be fairly representative men of Thebes who honor and respect the king and the gods. Their odes reveal both a strong attachment to the king as well as a foregrounded in religious culture. Messenger. The messenger enters in scene 3 and tells Oedipus that King Polybus of Corinth, whom Oedipus had believed to be his father, is dead. Oedipus also learns from the messenger that Polybus was not his father. The messenger himself had given Oedipus as an infant by one of Laius' men, and that he had untied Oedipus's bound ankles. He causes the shepherd who left Oedipus to die, having been given to Jocasta his mother, to come in and testify that Oedipus is Laius' son. Priest. After Oedipus's opening lines, the priest of Zeus is the next character in the play to speak, and he does so as a religious leader, an elderly representative of the people of Thebes. Standing before the king's palace, surrounded by the Theban people, the priest informs Oedipus and the audience of the misery-laden condition of Thebes. That is, a plague is killing many of the city's human and animal population, and fires are destroying the land and its crops. He praises Oedipus, who has solved the riddle of Sphinx, for his wisdom and ability to improve their lives, and asks of him, on behalf of the people, swiftly and decisively to act and end the suffering. The second messenger. The second messenger appears in the last scene to announce and describe Jocasta's suicide. He also relates Oedipus's discovery of her body and his subsequent blinding. He predicts future sorrow for the people whose kings descend from this polluted line. The second messenger also announces Oedipus's entry on stage after his self-mutilation. You will see a thing that will crush your heart of stone. Shepherd of Liars. The old shepherd is summoned by Oedipus so that he can discover his true parentage. The shepherd reveals his information only after Oedipus threatens his life if he remains silent. He admits to receiving the infant he gave to Polybus' messenger from Laius and Jocasta. Oedipus realizes his identity and his crimes of patricide and incest after hearing the shepherd's story. Let's now move to the major themes of the play. Fate versus free will. Guilt and shame. Choices and consequences. Thanks for watching this video. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share this video.